I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I quietly moved every asset out of reach. 2 weeks later, she finally filed, then panicked and claimed it was all just a joke when her plan blew up in her face. Hello Reddit I+ here. My name is Corbin Shea. I am 41 years old, and until recently, I believed I had built a steady, predictable life with my wife of 5 years, Nira. We met when I was 34, and she was 31, and our relationship had always felt simple, smooth, balanced. Nothing dramatic, nothing chaotic, just two people who liked the same random documentaries, the same late-night snacks, and the same habit of talking about nothing for hours. For the longest time, I thought that was enough. I used to joke with my coworkers that my life was so routine, it could be used to teach a class on stability. I worked as a financial analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm. She worked at a small interior design office. Our arguments were usually about where to keep the blender or whose turn it was to refill the pet fish tank. Nothing major, nothing alarming, which is why the shift in her behavior hit me harder than I ever expected. It started small. In fact, so small that I almost brushed it off. One night, around 6 months ago, she came home from work, tossed her bag onto the sofa like always, and walked into the kitchen. Her phone rang. Normally she would glance at it and let it ring if we were mid-conversation. But that day she darted for it like it was about to explode and hurried into the bathroom. She came out a few minutes later acting like nothing happened. I teased her, asking if she had been recruited for a secret mission. She laughed too hard at the joke, like she had to force the sound out of her throat. I brushed it off. But the next day, she set a password on her phone for the first time in our entire relationship. When I asked why, she gave me a speech about online security and hackers. Again, nothing technically wrong with that explanation. It just felt poorly rehearsed. Over the next 2 weeks, the phone behavior became more noticeable. If she got a call, she would step outside. If she got a message, she would tilt the screen away from me. If I walked into a room unexpectedly, she would lock the screen so fast, her thumb would blur. It was the kind of subtle pattern you explain away 100 times before you finally admit something is off. Around the same time, her personality started shifting. It was like someone dimmed a light inside her. The laughter that used to spill out of her easily became rarer. Conversation became thin and effortful, like I had to drag every word out of her. When I talked about our plans for the upcoming year, she brushed me off with vague comments. We used to dream out loud about buying a bigger house, maybe taking a trip to Madeira or Chefchaouen, but suddenly she acted like future plans were a burden. One particular afternoon shattered any remaining sense of calm I had. She told me she was meeting a coworker for coffee. Completely normal. She had friends. I trusted her. I decided to stop by a hardware store in the same area and by coincidence, drove past the cafe. That is when I saw her pacing outside with her phone pressed tight to her ear. Her face looked tense. Not annoyed, not frustrated. Tense, like she was discussing something that could shake the ground beneath her. I parked further down the street and stayed in my car. I am not proud of it, but instinct took over. I cracked my window slightly and caught fragments of her voice. 2 sentences stuck with me more than anything. It is almost set. I am ready to start over soon. The words wrapped around my chest and squeezed. Start over. Start over from what? Start over with who? She came home later that day and gave me a detailed story about her friend complaining about relationship problems. She spoke with so many specifics it felt like she had rehearsed the lines in a mirror. I nodded along, but my heart throbbed in my ears. Something had shifted in my marriage, and I was no longer sure if I was imagining it or walking straight toward disaster. 3 days later, things took another strange turn. We were eating dinner, and she suddenly brought up finances. Not normal budgeting or routine bill talk. She asked if we could create a shared folder where all account numbers, passwords, monthly statements, and investment breakdowns would be kept. She said it was smart in case of emergencies. Emergency planning is normal for couples. I knew that, but her timing was too convenient, too aligned with every suspicious moment from the past month. I asked what kind of emergencies she meant. She shrugged and said we might need the information if one of us fell sick, or if we had to make financial decisions quickly. On paper, nothing she said was wrong, but my instincts screamed that she wanted access to everything she did not have access to before. That night, after she fell asleep, my brain spun non-stop. My job taught me how to see patterns and risks long before they surface. I work with asset management daily. People hide money. People move accounts. People structure exits far in advance. Was my own wife doing that to me? The next morning, I cleared my head and started to observe her more closely, not intrusively, but attentively. Every detail added to a growing sense of dread. She had changed her email password recently. She stayed later at work. She started dressing differently on days she claimed she was tired. She became strangely invested in my schedule and asked when I would be home, which she never cared about before. I realized I needed to protect myself, not because I was certain of anything, but because I could not afford to be blindsided. So quietly, cautiously, I moved portions of my savings into accounts she could not access. I transferred other assets into holdings under my sole name. I updated beneficiaries on investment accounts. I arranged for my personal lawyer, whom I had not contacted in years, to review my financial structure. I left everything legal and transparent on my end. I simply positioned my finances so that if she intended to strike, she would hit nothing but air. 2 weeks later, the storm arrived. I came home from work to see her sitting at the dining table with a folder in front of her. Her eyes looked glassy, but determined. The moment I saw the paperwork, my chest tightened. She had filed for divorce. She said she had been feeling unhappy for a long time and wanted a clean break. She spoke as if she had prepared a script. She expected me to fall apart. She expected confusion, heartbreak, shock. What she did not expect was complete calm, because I had already seen the wave coming. She discovered I had moved my assets about a week later. The meltdown that followed was volcanic. She screamed that I had sabotaged her plan. She claimed she was only testing me, that the divorce filing was a joke, that it was meant to open a conversation about our relationship. A joke. Divorce papers. A joke. She tried to backpedal so hard she nearly tripped over herself. She insisted she wanted to work things out. She said she had never intended to hurt me. She painted herself as the victim of a misunderstanding, but I had already seen the truth long before she admitted anything. Her plan backfired because I moved first, and when she realized she would not get what she expected, she scrambled, reached, begged, pleaded. But the moment she filed, she ended the marriage. She just had not expected to bear the consequences. As I sit here writing this, everything is finalized. The house is mine. The accounts are untouched. The lawyer she hoped to impress was unimpressed, and the woman who thought she could outsmart me is now a memory. Looking back, the signs were there from the start. I am just grateful I paid attention before it was too late. The weeks after the divorce filing felt surreal, not painful exactly, more like a strange kind of awakening. Once the initial shock had faded, I realized I had been walking through my marriage half asleep. I had ignored subtle signs, brushed off red flags, and convinced myself that routines were the same thing as stability. It took the collapse of everything to understand how fragile the foundation had been. But the real chaos began not when she filed, but when she learned she had gained nothing from it. 3 days after the paperwork was served, she stormed into my apartment. She no longer lived with me because she had chosen to stay with her sister during the separation. She showed up without knocking, without calling, waving her phone around like it was evidence in a criminal trial. "Corbin, we need to talk." Her voice shook with anger and panic. I leaned against the counter and waited. She unlocked her phone, scrolled frantically, and shoved the screen at me. "This is the retirement account you told me about." She tapped it, desperate for my reaction. The balance had moved days before she filed, and she had just discovered it. The transfer alert had appeared while she was searching through old emails for account numbers she thought she had access to. "Why would you move money before telling me anything? Why would you hide this?" I kept my voice even. I simply said that I had the right to manage my personal assets, especially when I felt the marriage was unstable. She froze as if I had slapped her. "Unstable? Who told you anything was unstable?" I reminded her that she filed for divorce. She flinched and looked away. Her shoulders sagged, and for the first time, I watched her drop the confident mask she had worn throughout the month. She whispered something so quiet I almost missed it. I did not think it would go like this. She sank onto the sofa. Her eyes glistened, but I could not tell if she was sad or furious. Maybe both. She covered her face, took a deep breath, and said she had expected the divorce to be a wake-up call, something dramatic that would make me chase after her, apologize for being distant, and beg for another chance. She claimed she had no intention of actually ending our marriage. It was an elaborate stunt gone wrong. She looked up at me with this mixture of regret and disbelief, as if she could not fathom why her plan had backfired. I asked her why she filed if she did not want the marriage to end. She hesitated, playing with the hem of her shirt, and finally confessed that she thought I was becoming too comfortable. She felt unappreciated, overlooked. She thought a dramatic threat would shake me, but then she realized she could potentially leave with a financial cushion if things went her way. She admitted it quietly, barely above a whisper, but I caught it. She was tempted by the idea of walking out wealthier. Hearing her say it broke something in me. I was not angry anymore. I was done. She seemed to realize it too. Her expression shifted from angry to panicked in seconds. "Corbin, listen, please, I made a mistake. We can fix this. You and I can still make this work." But I did not budge. I told her calmly that she had crossed a line I could not unsee. The more she realized she had lost control of the situation, the more desperate she became. Over the next several days, she tried everything. First, she tried nostalgia. She sent old photos of our vacations, our early dates, the night I proposed during a lantern festival. She added long messages about how we had been perfect for each other. When that did not work, she tried guilt. She claimed she had acted out of fear. She said I had changed. She insisted she felt insecure and thought a dramatic push would make us repair things more quickly. When guilt failed, she tried anger. She accused me of emotional abandonment. She claimed I intentionally pushed her into filing by being too calm. She blamed me for protecting my own finances. Finally, when anger failed, she tried manipulation. She contacted mutual friends and told them I had blindsided her with secret accounts and hidden money. She painted herself as the betrayed spouse. She said I had grown cold and distant, and that she feared I was planning to leave her first. It was a desperate attempt to rewrite the story, but her plan collapsed faster than she expected, because I had kept every message, every timeline, every change in her behavior clearly documented. When people asked me directly, I showed them the facts. No drama, no theatrics, just the truth. Within a week, most of our mutual friends backed away from her. They saw through the story she was trying to build. That is when she tried her final tactic. Her sister called me late one evening, saying that Neera had broken down crying and wanted to meet in a public place to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a small lakeside park we used to visit. She was sitting on a bench near the water when I arrived. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally drained. She had tried every tactic, every angle, and nothing had worked. When I sat down, she turned to me with red eyes and said something I never expected to hear. I thought I was smarter than I am. She looked straight ahead at the water. I thought I could control this. I thought you would react the way I predicted. I thought I could scare you into loving me more. It was foolish, and I am paying for it. Her voice cracked. I ruined the best thing I ever had. It was the closest she ever came to genuine accountability. But even then, I could feel traces of self-pity woven into her words. I told her that we were beyond repair. She nodded slowly, wiped her eyes, and said she understood, even though I could tell she hated the answer. She asked if we could at least remain on civil terms after the divorce. I told her I had no desire for connection, but I would treat her with courtesy if future interactions were required by law. She accepted it with a small nod. We sat there for a few quiet minutes, both staring at the lake. It was strange how peaceful the moment felt, considering the chaos that had torn our marriage apart. After a while, she stood, thanked me for meeting her, and walked away without looking back. That was the last time we spoke in person. The paperwork moved quickly, partly because she no longer fought for anything. Her lawyer told mine she wanted to close the case as fast as possible. She took only her personal belongings and left everything else untouched. When the final decree came through, I felt a strange heaviness lift from my chest. Not joy exactly, but release. A quiet ending to a storm that could have destroyed me completely if I had not listened to my instincts. 2 months later, I found out through a friend that she tried dating someone new. It ended after 3 weeks. She became distant and secretive with him too, repeating patterns she did not understand. She never learned the root of her own behavior. As for me, I started rebuilding my life slowly and quietly. I took weekend trips, visited my parents more often, adopted a small terrier, and started journaling again. I am not sure if I am ready for a new relationship. Trust is not something that returns overnight, but I am open to the possibility that someday, somewhere, I might meet someone who knows how to hold a marriage instead of trying to weaponize it. For now, freedom is enough.